Hello everyone, I'm Jesus and welcome to the next episode of The Road to Old School MTG. In this video I have a quick package opening here. Mail day. This is actually, I believe, the second mail day for 2025. Something kind of small but personally important to me. But the main discussion for today is explaining the 1997 Worlds format. So this is a format that the playgroup that I'm in, the Sisters of the Flame, we've had a recent, last year, but I believe it was in December last year, a tournament held, and we are doing that again. So some in the Sisters group are setting up, have already set up another tournament in January 2025, actually 1 week from today's date. And I already have a deck. Actually I have two decks right now, but I'm focusing on this one now because this is the one I used last time, but it's been updated, and you guys have seen me buying a lot of cards specifically for this format in the last few mail day videos. So I wanted to give a proper explanation of the format and a proper explaining of my particular deck for that. Okay, so first, actually, let me jump into this mail day. So here, this is a 4 Japanese foreign black bordered Armageddon cards. So I got it off of a old school player with who I've met a few times and played against a few times. So awesome player. So he was just selling some cards, and this piqued my interest because, of course, my main deck, old school deck, is a Armageddon deck or Bantamgeddon deck, and the main card, right? Its namesake is the Armageddons, and I've been playing Chronicles Armageddons, right, which are like 25 cents each, right? So, a very cheap card. Then the other card that it's if Armageddon is the number one most important card, at least in terms of the namesake, the second one right below in terms of the creatures would be Serendipity Freaks, right? So I had before revised Serendips, right? But then I jumped up and to have 4 and white bordered Serendips, but I always kept the Chronicles Armageddons, right? So I figure, just to bump it up a bit in terms of, just making the deck a bit more splashy. Plus this was very cheap, $35 for a playset. I couldn't pass that up. So let me open that up first. Woohoo! And then I got a cool sticker, so I'm just gonna put it on the side, just because I'm not sure if the player wanted me to share that on screen. Alright, so the cards are just put on the side, and then this was mainly for protection and make things more solid, or at least that's what it looks like. And then, I really appreciate the flap here, so that way it opens up nice and neat. Alright, yeah man, these look crisp. Let's see, so pulling these out here, 2 on this side, so it should be a playset. 2 on that side. So yeah, very nice package, packaged very well. Man, these are crisp, completely brand new. Wow, it's like they came off of a pack. Wow. Yeah, these are either near mint. One of them has a little nick, but I mean, that's nothing. That's nitpicking. These are solid. $45 for something like this. Wow. I did get an Armageddon black bordered, or also foreign, but I believe it was a different language. And then I ended up giving it up for a surprise card. Mainly because I didn't have a playset, right? I just bought that one card just to give something that, that was a pretty, something cool to give. But that got me thinking about, having my own black bordered Ernam playset. So these are exactly what the doctor ordered. So I really think that that player for the sale. All right, so now the main topic of today. So first, I'm going to share some links in terms of explaining the format. So first of all, the format is from Ice Age up to 5th edition. So it has the Ice Age block and the Mirage block. So Ice Age and Alliances, but it includes Homelands, right? So this is one of the few times that we actually get to play with Homelands, because it tends to be excluded from almost everything. So this is a pretty cool, rare chance to play with Homeland cards. So Ice Age, Alliances, and Homelands. Of course, Homelands was actually, if I'm not mistaken, it was actually made right in between Ice Age and Alliances, right? So we never understood why Homelands was not part of the Ice Age block, right? Homelands, the flavor of Homelands had, like, it was totally different. So, like, I believe it was like in a different plane or whatever. But chronologically, the set was right in between Ice Age and Alliance, if I'm not mistaken, or the very minimum, just around that time, right? So it just made sense. And since that set came out during that time, people just played all those cards all together, right? So, in terms of chronologically, people play with all those cards all together as if it was a set. A group anyway, right? So Ice Age block with Homelands, Mirage block, which is Mirage Visions, Weatherlight, and 5th edition, right? So because of that 5th edition, and for me to stay on brand, right, with just the look, I've had to buy a couple of reprints that are in 5th edition that had different arts, like Black Knight. By 5th edition, Black Knight art was different, right, than the original old school Black Knight art, right? So of course, we're not so nitpicky, and we can, this is not an official format, right? So there's no Discord or play group, or at least not that I've noticed. So there's no official reprint policy or whatever, right? So we're just playing it between ourselves. But just for me to kind of be on brand and just feel like I'm actually playing in 97 Worlds, I wanted to. I bought some of those cards that had different arts, right? So within what I've been able to find, right, and figure out what cards needs to be swapped. All right, so those are the sets. Now let me give. I'm going to share a link to, and I'm going to also share screen here. This here is a link to the top 8 decks of the 97 Worlds tournament. So first of all, what is that, right? So there was a tournament, official Wizards of the Coast tournament held in 1997. I'm not sure of what particular time of the year it was, but there we go, right? So 97 Worlds in Seattle, and these are the top 8 decks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So so this one's called Black 5. That's the one that ultimately won. It seems like it's mainly mono black with splashes of blue and red, if I'm not mistaken. And so I'm going to include this link in the description, but you can kind of see, just that you can take the time to kind of see what people were playing back in those days, and it's pretty cool. And I've mentioned before that I joined Magic. Well, I initially started playing Magic, and I'm buying items for it, product for it, by the tail end of Revised. So I only bought one. I know I bought at least one Revised pack, maybe 2, but nothing more than that, right? So most of the cards that I had initially were gifted to me. So, but it was mostly Chronicles, 4th edition, stuff like that. So my main introduction was after 94, so around 95, 96, basically from Ice Age. So this 97 Worlds tournament is actually right where I was really coming into the game more strongly. So that's why I was really interested in this format once it was mentioned that this was going to be one of the tournaments that we were going to be playing in. So, um, so definitely this has a lot of nostalgia. I mentioned also that me playing in 93, 94 old school, actually that's right, there's a lot of nostalgia there, of course, but actually the main draw for me in particular was FOMO, right? Kind of like the fear of missing out. I had missed out on that, right? So I never played with boxes, and then I played with dual lens, and I never played with Black Lotuses, Power 9, whatever. Never even saw those cards. So because by the time Ice Age hit, all those sets were not compatible, right? It was rotated out. There might have been a little bit of a lapse where some of the sets previous, because I know for the Necro deck of the time, you still could use hippies and such, right? So there was a little bit of a transitional point, but eventually, like 93 and 94 was phased out. And of course, this is what I remember, right? And that's just between my play group of friends at the time. So me playing 93 and 94 is actually me wanting to play something that I never actually got to play much of, right? So if I played, it was very casual. I never saw any of the top cards. So that was my big draw for joining 93 and 94 old school, is wanting to play what I had just barely missed out on. But in terms of what I actually did play, this 97 Worlds is right up my alley, right? So, alright, so the deck that I made here is actually not any of these, right? So this is a homebrew deck. So let me show it here, and then I'll show the cards here. So I was able to acquire all the cards here by now. So let me explain the deck. And this is the second iteration of this. Initially, actually, I guess, first I started with green weenie deck, mono green weenie, and then I liked Maro a lot. So I'm like, I was thinking, okay, so let me play more things that made me draw my cards back to my hand. Stampeding wildebeest, bull elephants, they're still here. There's also another a Visions land that when you play it, it comes into play tap, but you have to return a force up to your hand, but you can tap it for 2 mana. Right, so stuff like that. Undiscovered Paradise bounces itself back. So I really like that interaction, right? So I figured, okay, these things are kind of drawbacks, the bull elephant, stuff like that. There's also the Pharaoh worm and that other one, right? So it just plays with lands, discarding it and then returning it. So that's how it started, right? Because I initially started with with the idea of a mono green weenie deck. But I really like that Maro interaction of having a lot of a large hand size. So I was thinking, okay, then I might as well just add Empyrial Armor as well. That goes even better. So, and then I figured Armageddon was also a very good card for the deck, because since I'm returning my own lands back up to my hand, and I had a lot of alternate means of mana production, right? Meaning I had, by that point I had the Queen Rangers and the Land of War Elves and the Birds of Paradise. Actually, no, maybe not. Maybe I did, I'm not sure. But definitely I've been having the Queen Rangers, the Birds of Paradise, and then I also have Wall of Rose, right? So there's a lot of mana production besides the lands, right? So because I knew I would be returning some of them up to my hand. So I wanted to also for that to be of benefit to me. So if I Armageddon, I would have already bounced some lands up to my hand anyway previously. And then that means my hand would have a few lands in it, and then I could play it after the Armageddon, right? So it seems like it had naturally a lot of synergy, and it did, and I really like the deck. But now this is now an updated version, which includes red, a splash of red. Firestorm. This is honestly a pet card. It's really awesome, and I remember it back from the day. So 1 red and it's an instant. I can choose and discard X cards. Firestorm deals X damage to each of X target creatures in our place. Right? So it's basically an X spell, but the X you pay it by discarding cards from your hand. But you have to target the exact same amount of targets equals to the cards that you discarded, and the damage that each of those targets gets hit by is equals to X as well. Alright, so actually I played a game today to practice an online game. And I played Firestorm. My opponent had 3 Winnies. This format is populated by very strong Winnies, right? So there's a lot of Winnies. in the whole format. So he had 3 weenies out, all with toughness 2, 1 or 2. So I played a Firestone, which is the only one I have, like you see. And I discarded 3 cards, so X equals 3 damage to 3 targets. And I had exactly those 3 targets, boop. And then that cleared the field with just that 1 card, right? So, and since I'm drawing cards back up to my hand anyway, or I'm trying to not play lands if I don't have to, because I'm anticipating either getting a Maro or getting an Empyrial Armor, right? So my hands is full anyway. So that Firestorm is a pet card. I needed to include one, right? So we'll see if it, once this deck gets going more, and then I try to make it more competitive. It's already very competitive. But it's definitely on the chopping block. But I really like it. It's a fun card, and as a one-off, I think that's fine. But then, like I said, this the format has a lot of weenies, very strong weenies. So Stormbind here is a card that will wreck certain decks. In fact, the game I was playing against, this deck, actually this version only had 1 Stormbind. I had 2 other creatures that I just took out because I wanted to put 2 more Stormbinds. That's how strong it is. And the nice thing about Stormbinds having multiples is there's no drawback. Let's say I play a Stormbind and then I draw another one, right? So usually if you, let's say, have an artifact out, Winter Orb, and then you get another Winter Orb, that second Winter Orb doesn't really do anything. You may still cast it just, as in case the other one of them gets destroyed, you still have another one already in play, right? But it doesn't really do anything unless the first one gets destroyed, right? Or you may hold it back, anticipating the other one to get destroyed, and then you can play, right? But more often than not, it's just a deck card. Stormbind, if you get another one, you just pitch it to the first one, and then you still get use out of the second or even the third one, right? So that's why I bumped it up. I was initially thinking, okay, maybe 1 more, but no, actually, since there's no drawback, I'm like, okay, let me put 3. And it's very, there's a lot of synergy with the game plan that I have, right? So since I'm putting a lot of cards up to my hand anyway, that means I have a lot of cards that I can pitch. Of course, normally I want to keep those cards in my hand because I want my Maros to be bigger. I want the Empyrial Armor creatures that I put it on to be bigger. True. But sometimes it's having that flexibility of, okay, sometimes I do want, it is better to pitch a card to destroy something, or just go straight for the player, right? Because you can Stormbind, discard a card at random to deal 2 damage to any target, and it costs 2 to activate, 2 colorless. So sometimes that's a better benefit than keeping those cards in my hand, anticipating a Maro, right? Or maybe I already had a Maro and then it died, and I'm like, okay, am I just gonna wait it out and stall while I get that second Maro, or while I get another Empyrial Armor? Or do I make use of my large hand and start pitching some to, right? So, and plus it gives me time. So if they kill my Maro, they killed one of my creatures, I can kind of buy myself some time by pitching some cards from Stormbind. Right, so that's the idea. And then how do the cards return up to my hand? So Bull Elephant, 4/4 for 4. When Bull Elephant comes into play, you have to return 2 forests, or bury Bull Elephant, right? So if you see, I have 16 forests, but I also have a lot of cards that are not green, right? So 4, 7, 8, 9. I got 10 non-green cards, and then Stormbind is green and red, right? So it's a gold card. So I needed ways to get non-green mana, right? So I have 2 City of Brasses. I don't want more than that because I don't want to get hit so much. Got 4 in the Discover Paradise. These are awesome because they return themselves up to my hand, and then I can do a lot of shenanigans with Maros and Empyrial Armors, and even with Stormbind. And then 2 Gemstones Mines as well. The Gemstones Mine, I may decide to swap that. Maybe I'm still trying it out. That's a recent switch, but I definitely want to avoid having 4 City Brasses or more than 2. I am becoming less and less enamored with City of Brass in general, even in old school. But in addition to all these land sources of non-green mana, I also have, of course, the 4 Birds of Paradise, and the Quirion Rangers work perfectly with them. So Quirion Ranger is another card that gives me more mana, makes me return cards up to my hand. Right? So Quirion Ranger, green 1/1, return a forest you control to owner's hand, untap target creature. Use this ability only once each turn. So you don't have to tap it. So a lot of players don't, who are unfamiliar with this format, right, or the card, they don't. It can be surprising to them that I activate the Quirion Ranger ability the turn I cast it, and that's allowed because you can't use abilities that cause the creature to tap. He has summoning sickness, or they have summoning sickness, so you cannot use an ability like that, like the Birds of Paradise. I can't get a mana the turn I bring them up, but Quirion Ranger is different. For the ability, you don't have to tap, so I can use the ability the turn I cast it, plus I can use the ability during my opponent's turn as well. So what can I do? First of all, it returns a forest, so it makes my hand bigger if I have a Maro Empyrial Armor out, and it untaps the Birds of Paradise, so I can get 2 mana out of them. I can attack with a creature and then untap that creature, so I have it as a defender as well. And then the forest that I return up to my hand, of course, it pumps up the Maros and pumps up the Empyrial Armor. But now that I've added the Stormbinds, I can pitch those cards to Stormbind, right? So the lands that I did play, little by little, I can start bringing them up, right? Because they are potentially 2 damage, right? After a certain while, I don't need more lands, right? Or the dealing damage is more important than having the lands in play. Plus, if I get that Firestorm, all those cards in hand, I can just pitch them out anyway in one shot, right? So that's the reason why actually I initially got 1 Firestorm in, because I like the idea of having, let's say, a full 7 card hand, playing 1 red, casting the Firestorm, pitching 6 cards. That's 6 damage to 6 targets, and I have to pick the same amount. X has to be equal to X different targets, right? So there has to be 6 legal targets if I were to do that, right? But maybe by that point I'm winning and my opponent's at 6 life. So yeah, I'll do that, even if I have to hit myself for 6 as well, right? Because if there's only 4 creatures out in play, by Firestorm for 6, that means I can hit the 4 creatures plus the opponent, but then I have to hit myself as well. There has to be the same X targets, legal targets, right? So I double checked on that, or else Firestorm would be even more broken. So that's what it was initially got me got the idea where to include Firestorm, but now I'm seeing it's actually very beneficial for other reasons as well. And like I said, it was good to blast 3 creatures at once. And since this deck, very easily I get cards up to my hand can regrow not so far after a Firestorm. Plus it's only a 1-off, right? So it's really a silver bullet. Alright, so this is the deck. Wall of Roots is just there to buy some time. Plus I can continue to get a lot of mana out of it, right? So theoretically I can use it 5 times. Plus, like I said, there's a lot of winnies, so a lot of the decks are very quick. And Wall of Roots buys me that time, right? Because the big guys that I have here, 4 Bull Elephants, 4 Maros, 2 Landomore Behemoths, this is actually a recent addition, but I really like it. Since I have so many creatures, I have 26 creatures. Little by little, it's dropped. I had, I think, around almost 30. So I've swapped some out, took some out, and then didn't replace it, or I put in more Stormbinds. So I'm still playing around, like I said. This is, there's not a lot of testing, since this is not a format that gets played, at all, basically, right? It's just a thing we're doing, something special. But I really like the format, and I do hope that it becomes a thing, kind of like there's a Ice Age format, there's a Mirage format. I think it would be a cool idea for our 97 Worlds format, or just a Worlds format in general, right? And then people can pick and choose which of the worlds they want to join. Right, so So this is the deck. Now let's look at the actual cards themselves, right? Because like I said, I do that whole list that you saw there, I do have it. And actually, yeah, let me start with the sideboard, since I didn't address it. And I literally just made this, so it could very well be different by the time I play next week. So 2 Pyroblasts, so these are from Ice Age. So basically identical to Red Elemental Blast. I think there's a slight difference between them. I'm still trying to figure out what it is. To me, they look identical. Alright, so 3 Pyroclasms, because like I said, there is a lot of weenies in the format. And for me, the either Pyroclasms or I may put in more Fire Blasts, Firestorms, I mean. Although I'm not sure if I have any more. I may have one more, so I'll see, right? But initially I am liking the idea of including Pyroclasms, but I do have to watch out because I do have a few. So the Korean Ranger and the Birds of Paradise are targets to my own Pyroclasm. So that's why I was kind of favoring adding more Firestorms, because then I can be more selective. So this one is still up for debate. Like I said, I literally just created all my mental capacity has been on creating the deck itself, and then this is just a secondary thought. So 3 Emerald Charms, it can just untap target permanent, so it's good as a defense, surprise defense. Destroy target global enchantment, that's the main reason I have it. It's an instant, somewhat of a disenchant. Global enchantment is a non-aura enchantment, right? So now it's called aura. Back then it was called either a local enchantment, right? So something, when you enchant something, that's a local enchantment. When you just enchant, it's an enchantment that affects the game itself as a whole, then that's a regular enchantment, that's a global enchantment. So that's what this targets. So I've just seen a lot of decks in this time frame have these as sideboards, right? So a lot of this is just me checking other things out and me anticipating things. City of Solitude, this card is really interesting. Each player may play spells and abilities only during his or her turn. So it basically makes counter spells impossible. And then 4 Swords. So this is one of the cards I was mentioning before that I had that I had needed to update. Of course, I have, not only do I have 4 old school legal ones, I have 8, because I think I bought 4 more. I'm pretty sure I bought 4 more, or actually I'm not too sure. I'm not 100%. I could have, but I know I have, of course, the initial 4 playset of old school swords. And when I played this version, the previous version of this deck, I didn't put swords at all. I totally forgot that swords was remade in Ice Age, right? So I thought swords was not reprinted, so I didn't even include it. And that was a big mistake, so I'm really correcting that. And since I wanted, like I said, be on theme, I chose to buy the Ice Age version, since I already have 4 old school 1994 versions. Plus, I mentioned before, I have experience playing in the Ice Age Black Alice, so these cards would be helpful for those formats as well, right? So that's why I'm really liking buying these cards, because it's not just for 97 worlds. It's good for Ice Age Black, Alice Black, Mirage Black, even pre-modern, right? Which I've dipped my toes in as well. All right, so this is the deck. Pretty, like I said, it's already completed. My Maro's Korean Rangers, that behemoth, that's literally a new addition. Maro's, but yeah, I really like it. Octavio Orangutans, I'm still playing around with how many. Before I had a way to bounce up my creatures using Stampeding Wildebeest, right? So I could bounce up the Octavio Orangutans and then recast them for a second effect. And then I had other cards, Octavi Ifrit as well. He's a 5/4 creature, but that has a cumulative upkeep of a green, I believe. But after a while, the wildebeest will return those before my the cumulative upkeep became too high, so I could replay them. So that was the idea. And then I also had Jeremiah Ants for that as well. But like I said, by that point, initially the initial idea was mono green, and then eventually transitioned to this. I may still try that original idea as well, since it's pretty different from what I'm playing now, right? So there are similarities, but I would include way different creatures. I would include Stampeding Wildebeest. I would include my Ants. I would include Uktabi Ifrits. Right? So that's 12 creatures right there. Right? So that's a substantial change. So yeah, and then here's the lone Firestorm. I gotta double check if I bought any more of these, just to, you know, because I am a little hesitant about the Pyroclasms. May I end up putting. So actually, here's some cards right here that I've been. These are some cards I had actually in the previous versions of this particular deck, right? So I could maybe put Serrated Arrows. That 4 casting cost is a little sketchy though, right? I mean, I do have 4 and 5 mana casting cost stuff, so it's not like I can't do it. But mainly is that it's slow. You play and then you can put up to 3 -1, -1 counters, if I'm not mistaken. So it's slow. And then if I need something that will blast away a few creatures, Pyroclasm is, you know, it's great for that. But if I want to be selective, this is better. But then it all depends on the situation, right? So I feel Serrated Arrows is just too slow. Whirling Dervishes, I was considering, it was reprinted in 5th edition. I think this may be 5th as well. I'm not sure. But like you saw from when I was screen sharing, there's either a lot of decks from the top 8 that either were mono black or heavily black with a splash of other colors, right? So black was a strong color. So it's just this previously had some Whirling Dervishes, River Balls. I really wanted to include them. I may still. It depends how aggro I want to be. I was considering swapping out putting in the River Balls for the Wall of Roots. And then here are the Stampeding Wildebeest, like I mentioned. I have 4 of these initially, and then there was a lot of synergy between these. And of course, since I wanted to return my cards up to my hand, this ended up being a benefit, not a drawback. So I could return the Octavia Freeds once their cumulative upkeep became too large. Same thing with the Yamamaya Ants, although they're very similar to Ball Lightning, where you kind of like, it's a kamikaze card, right? So you expect it to die. But if not, it has that cumulative upkeep is big. I think it has like 2 green cumulative upkeep, right? So it's not going to survive for long. So this would return it up. And then with the Octavia Fruit, Octavia Orangutan, you can return it, bounce it up, and then cast it again to get a second artifact. And then that was the idea when I got these, actually. Initially I did not have these cards, but then someone recommended these in the second version of this deck. And I did actually have them, that's why they're sleeved up. I put 2 in. But I've now, since I also took out I had these 4 here, right? So I had the 4 Stampeding Wildebeest, 2 Stampeding and then 2 Arctic Wolves. Arctic Wolves, 3 colors, 2 green, 4/5 creature. When Arctic Wolf comes into play, draw a card, but it has cumulative upkeep of 2, right? So initially I had 4 Stampeding Wildebeest, then I dropped it to 2, so I didn't want to put too many, and then I took out all of the Octavia Freeds. So the bouncing of creatures is no longer there. So then it didn't make sense for me to include the Arctic Wolves anymore. And then I switched to 2 Land of War Behemoths. I actually haven't played them yet, because there were only 2 in the deck, and when I was playing the games earlier today, I didn't draw any of the 2. Right? But for me, just doing mock games on my own here, because that's what I do a lot, to kind of get a feel for how things are going to go, I do like the addition of Land of War Behemoths. I do end up having quite a few creatures, either Korean Rangers, Birds of Paradise, the Wall of Roots, where, right, it's defensive creatures, and then now they could turn offensive with the addition of the Llanowar behemoths, right? So I may take out one Uktavi Ifrit and add a third behemoth. We'll see. But yeah, so here's the deck. Honestly, yeah, it's really fun to play, and actually it can get quite complicated because there's a lot of shenanigans with drawing cards up. You can draw cards up to your hand as an instant effect. So if I'm attacking from a Maro, let's see. So these are just some of the situations I've been noticing. So I attack with a Maro. I have 4 cards in hand. I have a Quirion Ranger out in play. Right, and of course I got some lands out in play. So I attack, it's a 4/4. The opponent maybe blocks, they double block to do 4 damage. They didn't notice my Quirion Ranger. I return a forest to my hand. First I untap the Maro itself. Just because you untap it doesn't mean it's not in combat anymore, right? So I think before there was that rule, if you untap an attacking creature, it removes it from combat. So we are playing with these old cards, but we're using modern rules, or at least for the most part. And by this point, there's no mana burn. So Maro's still attacking, but now he's untapped, so I could use it as a blocker if he survives. And now I drew one card, one force up to my hand, so now he's a 5/5. So if they don't pay attention, this could be something that throws off their math, and then I get a lot of extra benefit out of it, right? So there's a lot of interactions like that. Or right, so I draw it up, I attack, no blocks, and I draw this up again to my hand, untap it, have it as a defender. It deals even 1 extra damage because now I of course I do all this before damage is assigned. So now Maro hits for 5 since I have 4, and then I return a forest. But if I also have a Stormbind now, I can just tap my other mana that I still have out and discard this card, and then or whatever cards, and do damage that way, right? So there's really a lot of synergy. With the addition of the Stormbind, it has a lot more synergy that I actually didn't initially anticipate it. I mean, I should have, and I did see it, but I didn't see how strong it really was going to be and how intuitive it was going to fit within what I built here. That's why I only included one initially, because it was kind of like I saw it like a silver bullet, similar to the Firestorm. But this one, I played a few games against an opponent. He had a mono. He actually built the #1 deck that you saw on the list, right? Where it's mainly mono black, but includes a splash of red and blue for direct damage and for some blue spells, mainly Manowar. This, for 2 other games, I got a Stormbind numbered. At that point I only had 1 in the deck. In 2 out of the 4 games, I played this and I won because of it, straight up. And from me having the experience of the last tournament where there was a lot of winnies, it's just I'm seeing the need to include more of, right? So I added 2 more, so now I have 3 in total in the deck, and it fits nicely with what I'm doing because I have a large hand size anyway, so me pitching 1 card here and there is not going to affect much, but that extra 2 damage can actually make it so that my Maros can come in and it won't get chump blocked, or it won't get double blocked, triple blocked. So it's even more likely that it survives and it stays longer, and then I can, as I draw more cards as the turns pass, or as I return more cards to my hand via Quirion Ranger or Bull Elephant on Discover Paradise, I will play on Discover Paradise. I will prefer to use it first as opposed to my forest, because I know it's gonna get returned up to my hand in the beginning of the turn. I'll attack first. After the attack, after Maro deals this damage, or the creature I put an Empyrial Armor on, then I'll play the Undiscovered Paradise. Undiscovered Paradise, of course, assuming Maro does, or the creature, that I put the Empyrial Armor on, it doesn't have enough damage where already placed on it, where if I played a card or 2, it'll die, right? Because remember, the damage assigned to it lasts until end of turn. So I also have to be careful. So that's why I was saying there's a lot of intricacies. Initially, I just wanted a green, mono green Stampy deck. But little by little, it's transitioned to something that's actually quite complicated, and I really like that aspect of it, right? Where it's very aggressive, but it's also a lot of has a lot of nuance to it. So, this is my introduction here for you guys into the 97 Worlds format. Like I said before, this is not really a format where there's no Discord or anything, right? So it's an unofficial format, I guess you can call it like that. But I really enjoyed it, and this is really my heyday of Magic. These are the cards these are my Moxus, Black Lotus, Power 9. This is right. This is what I consider to me, right? Those kind of iconic cards. Nothing beats, of course, Old School, but this is a very strong second. That's why I have not. I don't anticipate too much going into Alice or Mirage block, because this one expands even more the card pool, which just makes it a lot more interesting. And with the 5th edition cards, there's still some like you got Armageddon again, right? So there's a lot of Old School cards that come back because of that. So it's a nice blend of still some Old School cards, but with, of course, a lot of the cards that came really directly after Old School, right? Which is 93, 94. I will, in 1 week's time, the tournament will occur. I do anticipate making a couple more changes, but nothing big, right? I really like the deck in general. I'll see if I can squeeze some more online playtesting for it, but then I'll do a follow-up video just showing how the tournament went, how I did with it, and so on, right? So I'll give a little update after that. Thank you guys for watching.